the pedagogy world right now, as she is giving talks and master classes and workshops about her product all over the world. She herself is a Russian American, so this book actually is like the.
Right, that's a very good point. All right, keep going.
Yep.
Yep.
So this is a book that I recently discovered last year, actually, although this book has been out for a while. Now, I'm holding up the second book in the series because I actually gave away the first book to one of my students.
What a good teacher.
The first book is actually horizontal, like the other book that I showed you. But this is called Tales of a Musical Journey, and it's by a really popular pedagogue named Irina Gorin. She is quite big in the pedagogy world right now, as she is giving talks and master classes and workshops about her product all over the world. She herself is a Russian American, so this book actually is like the friendlier, more like Americanized version of this book. This is a very familiar book for those who grew up in Russia, the Russian School of Piano Play.
Right, a lot of teachers mentioned that book.
Yes. But if you open it, it's not very appealing to the American student audience. There's no pictures. It's black and white. The font is really small. But all that to say, I still do enjoy teaching out of this book, and I do use this book. But when I have students who are as young as 4 or 5 years old, they want something a little bit more colorful, like this. There's pictures and there's bigger fonts, and they break it down in a more friendly way. And what I really like about this book is that it's in the form of a chapter book. So, and it says at the very bottom here, for young pianists, their teachers, and parents. So it's important that the parents are involved in the process of working with their child. And you can see, even from here, it'll say chapter 1, and these are the characters in the book, and then it's basically like a fairy tale.
So it's sort of like a storybook almost.
It is, and it gets students really into this world of music in a really fun and imaginative way. Gets them really excited, and there are even like little props that Irina sells on her website that you can have along. It's really cute. But what I also like is that she takes this book. A lot of the pieces in this book actually are in her own method book here, but of course, the sizing and the font is all different. And she breaks it down so basically to like it moves slower than the traditional book, which is great for students who might need a little bit of help with processing concepts. But I would recommend this book to someone who moves quite quickly, someone who's bright and gets things much faster. This is for someone who's more reluctant to start piano, but this is a great way to start it because it's fun and exciting.
So it sounds like right. Sounds like the second book is for younger demographic, people who are younger or people who I guess struggles with piano practice a little bit. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think the majority of my students tend to be that, although it doesn't have to be that way. I know that some older students also enjoy going through this as well. Okay. But just for my own students, it seems like those who are 4 or 5 year olds really love starting with this, and parents would agree too.
Okay, so after the first book of that book, since you said it moves a little slower than usual, what do you learn after completing the first book of that, roughly?
So you learn to find A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the staff, and I'm just talking about the middle of the staff, like starting from like middle C and like few notes above and a few notes below. You also learn how you learn basic rhythm, so like your quarter notes, your half notes, dotted half notes, etc. basically what a staff looks like, treble clef, bass clef, what a measure is, double bar line, repeat sign. That's, I mean, that's pretty much it, and the pieces are quite small still.
Mm-hmm. And do you get to, and sorry, keep going, were you, sorry.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, this book, the second book, ventures off into like slurs and staccatos and more notes on the side.
Gotcha. And it also has songs in them, right? You can also, are there teacher accompaniments in them as well, or not really?
So these don't really have teacher accompaniments, but
Okay.
The book comes with a CD, which you can play back. And I believe you could access the sound clips on her website. So if you don't have a CD player, you could just go to that website and use the sound file from there. But
Gotcha. When you mentioned that, reminded me of a question that I was going to ask you. You're not affiliated with any of these books, are you? You're not getting paid to recommend them. All right. So for our audience out there, for our listeners or watchers, this is completely from the heart of Sherry. It's these are good books. So just wanted to put it out there. All right. So great. So that was the second book. What about the third one? Yeah.
So the third one is called Little Gems for Piano, and there are different volumes based on different levels, and it's by a pedagogue named Paula Dreher. This book actually, if you see right here, you can't really see it, but it says Companion to Tales of a Musical Journey by your Newborn. So they kind of go along. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a methods book. Like, you don't really learn the basics like you do with the other two that I mentioned, but it's a great alternative route or supplementary pieces of music. This book is mostly about playing pieces by rote. Although they do have it all printed out, they've notated everything on here. It's just easier to play by demonstration and by listening.
So let's elaborate on that a little bit. You said that it's notated already. How then do they teach you by rote? Does it? Does the teacher play first, or how does it work?
Yes. So the book actually outlines specifically kind of like the steps that you should take, like a recommended steps. And the first step is for the teacher just to play the piece from beginning to end as it sounds, so that the student knows what they're going to be playing. Then the next step is to ask questions to the student about what are some like repetitive patterns that they notice. And when they are able to detect those patterns, you show them those patterns, and you work on it on the piano and have them repeat those patterns, and you do this multiple times until they feel confident about it. Then you add other parts, and usually the patterns are very similar to one another, so it's not like you keep learning from scratch. You kind of build upon the first pattern. And once they have the whole piece, which a lot of students can kind of put together within the same lesson, you could also put it like the teacher's part, which they have here as well. But what I also like about this book is that not only do students gain experience by listening and by playing by ear, but they also have a lot of detailed description on, like, it says like at the bottom, like, did you notice this, or create a suggestion for this. They also tell you to focus on technique that has been outlined in the details of a musical journey. Like if you're playing things smoothly or with slurs, how are you using your wrist? How are you lifting? How are you breathing? They actually mention stuff like that too. So technique is not non-existent. It actually is a very much part of this book.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I just want to remind our audience that you can ask questions in the chat anytime you want, and we will try our best to answer them throughout, even during the masterclass section. And also, since one of the books that you mentioned, actually one of our masterclass students today will actually be playing from one of the books. So that would be something to that student is playing at around 11:40. So for those of you who are interested in seeing this put into practice, so you mentioned that these books all do different things to students. What progress or what kind of difference have you seen in your students after you switched them on these books compared to other books?
Well, one I would like to mention is just the teacher's sanity. I mean, as a teacher with many students, it can get very boring if you assign the same book to the same students for years and years and years. I mean, I can only handle playing the same pieces for so many times. So it's part of it is also for like, you know, making sure that the teacher has rest. You know, being able to experience different types of books and different types of pieces with different types of students. But for my students personally, I found that they think about music a different way because of these books. Especially this one here, the Tales of a Musical Journey. A lot of times I find that they are really immersed in that storyline, which is perfect for when you are just starting piano and when you're that young. And it's actually motivating to practice more, especially because there is an expectation that parents should be involved. Parents are reading the story with them. They are they're really committed, more committed I think than I've seen my students in previous years. And even with the Premier Piano course, although that is very similar to maybe other method books out there, I find that students are enjoying these pieces a lot. And of course, like as what I mentioned before about the, you know, playing different positions, I don't have any issues with my students not being able to start in different positions, which is good because you know, I have certain transfer students who are still working over getting over that single position, and it is very hard to like break that habit. So I'm trying my best to make sure that that doesn't happen to any of my students.
Gotcha. So let's say I am a beginner. I'm a piano student, beginner, and I started on one of these books. At what point do you think it's time for me to move on from method books? What, you know, is it a specific time frame, or is it, you know, by the time you get to a specific book? How do you decide when one leaves the method books and go into the real world, per se?
Yeah. So when you see a lot of introductory classical pieces, you have to assess what they already include. Like, are you playing hands together most of the time? Or are you have to know slurs and staccatos at this point? Most of the time, yes. How wide are the notes going on the staff? Like, how high does it go? How low does it go? When you assess that and see where your student is at in their method book, you have to see if maybe that jump is too far of a jump, or if it's just right. So I think that's one factor to think about. But another thing is that it really depends on the student's like willingness and readiness to move on. Because as we know, classical music is a lot more complicated than most other genres, which will require more practicing and more commitment. So if the student is willing to practice more and, you know, they actually enjoy listening to classical music, then maybe making that switch earlier on is not going to be a big deal. But if there's students who are more reluctant about practicing, then, and you can try, you know, sending them like one introductory classical piece to see how they handle it. A lot of times you just kind of learn by trial and error with your students, right?
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I just feel like if they're more reluctant, then maybe I'll keep them on with the method books. But a lot of these method books have multiple levels, and you can go on and on and on with these books. Right. So it really depends on the student.
So from your experience on average, how long do you think, I know this is a very, very generic question, but how long do you tend to see them spend on these method books on average? Let's say half a year, 1 year, 2 years. What's a rough time frame? Assuming that you're practicing like a normal, like regularly, if you're practicing, let's say half an hour a day or so. What has been your experience?
I think the average turning point into semester classical pieces would be about a year or two. Year if they're more on the faster side, and 2 years if they're a little bit more on the slower side. I do have exceptions. I have students who switch over in like 6 months, or students who stay on method books for a really long time because they really don't practice as much as they should. So there are outlier cases, but I'd say 1 to 2 years is about the norm.
Gotcha. So let's just summarize a little bit, okay? So in a method book, in any kind of method book, what do you think are the most important qualities of a method book that stands itself from the other method book? And from those qualities, how does one decide for themselves which method book they should?
Someone who's bright and gets things much faster. This is for someone who's more reluctant to start piano, but this is a great way to sell it.
Use.
Fun and exciting. Yes, I think some of the qualities
sounds like the second book is for younger demographic,
a particular way or a method that
people who are younger or people who I guess struggles with piano practice a little bit. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think the majority of my students do that, although it doesn't have to be that way. I know that some older students also enjoy going through this as well. Okay. But just for my own students, it seems like those who are 4 or 5-year-olds really love starting with this, and parents would agree too.
Okay, so after the first book of that book, since you said it moves a little slower than usual, what do you learn after completing the first book of that?
Yes. So you learn to find A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the staff, and that's it. I'm just talking about the middle of the staff. We're starting from middle C and few notes above and few notes below. I would just look into that just because while
Так это есть он самый, так это единица.
Хочешь узнать, как сделать сайт всего лишь за 1 вечер? Жми на кнопку и регистрируйся в наш бесплатный тренинг.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you the best adult method books of 2021. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and make sure to check the notifications bell to never miss a new video. A week ago I posted a video about the best piano method books for the young beginner for small children, and I promised to make another one for the older beginner or adult beginner. In this video I'm going to refer to both of these groups as adult beginner. So if I say adult, just think about it as an older beginner, a 17-year-old as well, or a 15-year-old. The book's materials and approach for the adult beginner is very different than for the young beginner. The adult beginner will want to play songs that they heard on the radio, their favorite classical pieces. Adults have a very busy
Нет, вот этого не было. Ну, наверное, да. Что он тоже Вот видите, самое.